I'm going to go ahead and hit record here and welcome everybody to the first meeting of 2024 for the Broadband Consortium Pacific Coast. We have a pretty light agenda today, but really eager to engage and hear from all of you about what your priorities are this year. Give some updates from both the federal, state, and local levels that might impact those priorities so we can start to navigate them together. If you would please be so kind as to drop in the chat your introduction. What is your name? What organization are you with? What is your role at that organization? And what's your coverage area? You know, what geographic areas do you serve? Are you working mostly in infrastructure and deployment and construction of fiber routes or broadband routes in general? Are you working more with the digital equity piece, digital upskilling, connecting communities through signing them up, or something else I'm missing? If you could put that in the chat, then we can all start to get to know who we all are on this call. I will ask the BCPC team to introduce ourselves verbally. So if you are new to this call, I'm Shelby Arthur, and I am the Tri-County lead for the Broadband Consortium Pacific Coast, covering San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura County. I'm also the point person for Santa Barbara County. And I will pass it over across my screen here to Michael. Would you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Foote, Director of Economic Development at REACH, and also part of the BCPC for San Luis Obispo County. REACH serves San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County.
Thank you. And then Tim.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Tierney, doing mapping and GIS support for the BCPC.
Thank you. Bill.
Bill Simmons with BCPC, historian, and working with the VCOG team down in Ventura County.
Thank you. Malika, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Malika. Sorry, there's a little echo. And it's because I'm sitting in the office right next to Shelby on two different computers. But I am working with the BCPC on digital equity as well.
And Vivian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vivian Vasquez. I work with the EDC and part of the BCPC team. I work closely with Bill, doing some work in Ventura County and focusing on the broadband strategic plan for Ventura County.
Thank you. And that is our team as it stands right now for the Broadband Consortium. We are in a little bit of a transition stage, you know, working on different projects, adding new team members, and just shifting roles a little bit. If you notice, Bill called himself the historian, so he's our key advisor for the Broadband Consortium, helping us keep track of all the things that have already happened as we move forward into the next phase of this organization. And again, if you could please, if you're on the call, please put your name in the chat so we know who you are and what organization you're working with. It helps us also to track who attended today, and we do need to report that information up for our grant purposes. We really appreciate you just dropping your information into the chat. Go ahead and switch slides. So our agenda today, as I noted, is fairly brief and open. Updates from around the county. We wanted to start out with the roundtable to give all of you an opportunity to share any updates that you want the group to know in terms of your work. We also would like to hear about your broadband priorities for 2024, whether that is expanding your footprint, maintaining your footprint, getting more folks in the community connected, launching a new digital skills program, anything that you sort of have in your line of view for the next year that you are interested in sharing. We want to give you the opportunity during this roundtable to do that. Then we'll go through a few updates, some highlights from the governor's budget release. that we noticed. Happy to have any input from those of you on the call who are deeply embedded in the budget and the state level funding. An update on the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP. There's been a big change to that, and so we're interested in sharing that with you and hearing some ideas about how to move forward, supporting efforts to promote affordability for community members that need it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the statewide digital equity plan. The public comment period is open until January 25th. And so we'll go through a little bit about each, just telling you the sections and inviting you to make a public comment based on your unique perspective in your organization. And then we'll close it out by asking for your input on what discussion topics you'd like to see this year. We're planning out our calendar of advisory meetings and topics to track, and we want to hear from you about what discussion topics would be meaningful to you. So we'll hit the next slide and just start out our roundtable discussion. Any updates from your organization, from your county or municipality that you want to share? Any challenges and barriers, successes, growth, and really your priorities for 2024? And if no one wants to go first, then we'll start with the BCPC team. Can I ask, maybe I'll just share what our BCPC work plan entails, actually. So for 2024, we are moving forward with our work plan. We've requested a slight modification from CPUC just to clarify language in our objectives and activities that we're launching this year. Primarily, what I will share is an overview so you kind of understand what our organization's objectives are according to CPUC. First one, collaborating with stakeholders. That's you all. That's the folks that aren't on this call, but that are reading our newsletter and setting up one-on-one meetings with us. Local officials, consortia members, internet providers, digital equity practitioners, digital navigators, really looking at priority areas in our region, how we can reach them, what are the effective partnerships that we can help support in order to make that happen, and what are some cost-effective strategies to help achieve access in our communities. Second objective, identifying potential CASF projects. Any grant connected to SB 156 and AB 164. We're looking at infrastructure projects. We're looking at public housing projects. We helped out with FFA last year. This year, we're opening up some broadband loan loss reserve grants through CPUC. So any projects that would help promote deployment and really look at what might be the potential projects and partnerships that we can support in terms of CASF projects. Our third objective is, of course, assisting any applicants that want to participate in those grant programs to help answer questions about the projects that you've identified, to be a resource to you and a liaison with CPUC if you have questions. The fourth objective is really looking at any activities that can lead to infrastructure projects or broadband deployment. So we will really be focusing on promoting and sharing out our regional GIS platform, so regional mapping opportunities to highlight priority areas, to demonstrate where projects are already in place, to support permitting activities when those projects are ready to launch, and really look at how can we collaboratively use information to connect the people who are not connected in our area. And we will also, under that objective, be tracking the work of the digital equity coalitions in each county. These are those practitioners that are working with community members to help them gain access through affordability, access to devices, and upskilling training as needed. Those are our primary objectives and activities. So if that gives you any food for thought, please feel free to jump in next and share any 2024 priorities or discussion topics that you have coming up on your radar.
I nominate Bill to talk about or Vivian, one of the two, to talk about the VCOG effort?
Thank you, Brian. Great idea. Bill or Vivian?
I can hop in, sure. I can give a brief update in terms of what we've been doing the past few weeks, and then I can talk a little bit about what the next few months will look like for us as part of the VCOG team. So in terms of the last few weeks, we had our first VCOG broadband working group meeting of the year. So we got all the cities together, and we decided that February 1st would be the push day that we're going to send out both the speed testing and the needs survey that we've developed for Ventura County. So February 1st will be that day where all the cities will be pushing that out via social media and a few other ways. So we're trying to be creative and think about using utility bills or maybe school like, you know, printouts for kids and things like that, just to make sure that we're reaching folks and not just using internet-based outreach. So that push will be starting at the beginning of next month. So we'll be looking to start analyzing that data as it gets collected over the next few months. But really in terms of priorities for us, and Bill, I'll let you add anything else, but I think our main priority is really to just kind of make sure that everyone is aligned and has the information that they need to be able to go after a lot of these broadband investments. And ultimately, hopefully, that regional strategy plan that we come up with will be helpful in that, but really the process is what the important part is, and the conversations that we're having leading up to that. So looking forward to the next few months. Bill, is there anything else you'd want to add about that?
No, I don't think I could have said it better. It is the process that's involved, and it really is about convening, and these are people that need to get together to talk about what's happening at the community level. Looking forward to being able to facilitate that.
And I'll piggyback on that too, looking a little past the speed testing phase. You know, VCOG, using their LOTA funds, are looking to do community events in each of Ventura County's 10 cities. So I'm actually starting the groundwork for that to try to get you know, stakeholders, interested folks within each of the communities to give their feedback and identify what their needs and priorities are. So actually, I lured out my colleagues over at the school district with lunch later today after this meeting to start laying the groundwork for that. And I see Steve Sawyer's on the call. I'll be reaching out to you as well to see, you know, how we can coordinate that, since you're, you know, the leading provider here at Moorpark currently. But we're starting to look to that in the spring as well.
Thank you, Brian.
I'll be standing by, Brian.
You're a cheaper date. I can lure you with coffee, Steve.
I don't know. I think the ante just got upped. Anyone else want to jump in with the priorities or plans for this year? I'm gonna call in Malika to share about this digital upskilling initiative that's spreading out into Santa Barbara County from Ventura County.
Hi, so EDC has developed a wonderful digital upskilling curriculum that is open to the public, and Vivian can speak to the curriculum and the access to the materials after this, but the city of Goleta actually is working with a 3CE grant that is providing 2 courses on digital upskilling. One is for small business owners to get their small business online, and it will be administered in both English and Spanish. It's a 9-week course, followed by individual business planning sessions, in addition to another course, which is a new to tech course that is going to be offered in 6 cohorts two modules. One is first in Spanish speaking, so 3 cohorts in Spanish speaking and 3 cohorts for what the grant is called identified as mature workers or reentry community members. And for folks that are completing the courses, they are eligible to receive Chromebooks. And really, I think the initiative is to get people upskilled in their digital navigation and materials. And so those will start in February, the end of February. We're still finalizing dates. And once those dates are finalized, we'll send out communications and flyers to all the folks on this call so that everybody can share them with their respective communities. And I don't know, Vivian, you want to talk a little bit more on the curricula that you guys developed? It's amazing. It's such a easy offering for any community that's in need of curricula that's kind of a plug and play.
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk a little bit about that. So as Malika mentioned, there's 2 cohorts that we're running, and well, now we're running them in Ventura County, but we'll be starting in Santa Barbara soon as well. And so I just shared in the chat, one of the things that the funding for these courses asked us to do is to also make sure that this is something that's shareable and replicable to others. And so for the Computer Basics New to Tech course, we've created this Google site, which I just linked in the chat, which has all the different curriculum, which includes PowerPoints for teachers, activities, homeworks, different tests to kind of test yourself at each unit. So we're making this completely publicly available and free. And we're planning to do the same for the Get Your Small Business Online course. That site is still under construction. Hopefully it'll be done in the next few months. But yeah, so we have the Computer Basics curriculum available now, and hopefully the small business available soon. So please feel free to use it and let us know if there's anything we can do to help support you in using it as well.
Thank you. Now there's some other folks that have some digital skills curriculum also that they support the community with. So if you wanted to share anything about that or any other priorities, we'll do one last call for contributions.
Hey, Shelby, I can jump in for a second.
Okay, thank you.
Kirsten McLaughlin with Cox Communications. We are continuing to, I mean, we're always upgrading and investing in our network. So we continue that work to provide, augment more fiber and provide, more speeds, more bandwidth, less latency, all the things we know our customers want. Also just continuing, and we know here in South Santa Barbara County, we work with so many of our digital equity partners, and love hearing, Malika, I love hearing about the trainings in Goleta. I'd love to learn a little bit more, and if there's a way for us to plug in a little bit there. But continue just to get the word out around our digital equity programs and our affordability programs. I think many of you know, and I know we're going to talk about ACP, but with sort of the sunset of ACP or the pending sunset, we as providers actually have to start notifying our customers. I believe it's next week by the end of the month. And so that's going to create a lot of questions, some confusion. And so working with, especially with partners in education on trying to help our customers who are taking the ACP benefit sort of navigate that, make sure they're on the best affordability plans for them as those as that subsidy goes away. And then we're also always looking, and I know I've talked to many of you on the call about this, but we're always looking for growth opportunities, expansions, et cetera. We're waiting on our FFA grant, which we'll hear about whenever we hear about, but not only for potential network expansions, but we also on the business side have cloud and managed services solutions for businesses that don't necessarily have to be in our footprint. So always happy to chat with anyone about that and or connect you with folks on my team so we can dive into opportunities there.
Thank you, Kirsten. Anyone else that'd like to jump in before we move forward? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. We'll go into some updates. If you have questions about the next couple of topics here, or you have any information that I'm not mentioning that would be relevant to the conversation, please feel free to unmute and jump in. So there's two sections to this. We have some updates from the governor budget that listed broadband, a few different broadband items that will impact deployment efforts and connectivity efforts in the next few years. Just some rebalancing act. And then we have some updates from CPUC about programs that are opening this year, how some of these governor budget items might shift things. But to start with the governor's budget, and we are waiting for more information about this, but the key highlights are essentially that the broadband deployment funding for connectivity to reach the broadband for all goals of connecting 98% of Californians have really shifted over to making sure that that statewide middle mile is complete and that it reaches parts of the regions or of the state, excuse me, that maybe were removed at one point or taken out, and that community advocates stepped up and said, hey, wait a second, you need to actually include this community in your route. So they've actually allocated an additional $1.5 billion over the next 2 years for CDT to complete the full 10,000 miles of the statewide middle mile. And they break it down. The target for completion is December 2026. We've actually had conversations with Caltrans in Santa Barbara County, and they are already, they have some projects that are starting in the spring for in terms of actual in the ground construction to work towards that statewide middle mile goal. We heard from Caltrans that on the segments that Caltrans is building, that they're actually hoping for some parts of our region to be completed this year, and then some parts of our region to be completed next year. In order to rebalance the budget after allocating that 1.5 billion over to the middle mile, they are delaying funding for the last mile infrastructure grant. So they're delaying it from 24-25 to 26-27. It maintains the full appropriation, but it rebalances it across a new timeline. I did hear back, I reached out to CPUC to ask, are they planning to have a 2024 window open for this grant? And they are. They don't have a timeline for us. So when I asked for information from CPUC about the release of resolutions and recommendations for resolutions for infrastructure grants that were submitted last year, they were not able to share information with me about that process. They are able to share that they are planning to open a 2024 cycle, and they will announce it when they know more about the timeline. The governor's budget. Go ahead. Or maybe you're just unmuted. If you have something to add, feel free to jump in. The Broadband Loan Loss Reserve Program. So this is a program that's scheduled to open this year and is really intended for public agencies and nonprofits to be able to balance the costs of investment in broadband infrastructure that would be owned by a public or tribal or nonprofit entity. And it's fine if it's operated and maintained in partnership with a private provider, but this loan loss reserve is really designed to help support public agencies in their development of networks and actual infrastructure for their communities. So that particular fund has been reduced overall, going from a $750 million fund to a $500 million fund. The allocations have been redistributed across three budget cycles. So we will see this year the application that's scheduled to open feasibly in March, possibly, shifting timelines, would be 175 million, and then distributing the rest of it over the next 2 financial cycles. So that's a broadband loan loss reserve. We will talk more about that program at a future meeting once things have settled and we know a little bit more about what will be completed. In the governor's budget, the last item that really was targeting broadband was how it connects education facilities. Obviously, during COVID is when it really came to light that some of our education facilities are underfunded for technology and broadband infrastructure, and that it was vital to helping students progress in their education over a period of a public crisis, basically. So they are planning to extend the broadband infrastructure grant program for education facilities through 2029. It was set to expire June 2024, and they are allocating $5 million of non-Prop 98 funds for joint projects that join together schools, libraries, and telehealth providers to work together to access high-speed fiber broadband. Or broadband in general. The K-12 high-speed network fund is seeing a $3.2 million increase to the general fund for Prop 98, and that is really to make sure that our underconnected and low-income schools, especially in the rural areas that have more trouble gaining access to high-speed networks, that they have some supplemental funds to help provide access. The state special schools infrastructure, and that is for special schools that specialize in working with students who need alternative education options for their ability to progress. That's seeing a $3.4 million increase. Unfortunately, state libraries is seeing a $34 million decrease in the fund that was allocated to connect through partnerships with schools. Originally, there was 35 million allocated to that fund, and there was just a very low participation apparently, and so they have decreased it by 34 million. Sounds like it wasn't as big of a hit, or somebody didn't do a good enough job of promoting it, and so there was not as much participation as we would have liked in that program. Does anyone have any other interpretation of this governor's budget updates that I'm missing? Y'all are such experts in it and tracking it. Sounds like no. All right. Let's move forward then to the next piece, and that's updates from CPUC. Of course, this is part of our primary purpose, is to bring you these updates from CPUC. FFA applications, just a reminder that these are largely oversubscribed. The FFA rulemaking, CPUC's rulemaking states in their rulemaking that award announcements should be made by the end of March 2024. I've been reminded by people with far more extensive experience than myself that these rules can be modified and changed to extend that. I think the folks that are in the know are expecting award announcements by the end of spring, early summer. Anyone on the call want to touch on that? Any FFA application updates that you want to share? I know there's some real experts on the call here.
I think it's a waiting game right now.
Yeah, right. I did hear from NTIA rep that CPUC is trying to structure the award distributions between FFA and infrastructure grants so that they are waterfall, so that there's not a duplication of effort, and that may play into why some applications have been decided on for the infrastructure grant and some are still waiting. So as soon as we have information about FFA, so will you. The infrastructure grant applications that were submitted last year by June 1st, 2023 are still in the decision-making phase. 2 applications were recommended for the CPUC resolution for the February meeting, and they were submitted by Cruzio and QuickBit. Cruzio does not serve our area. They, I believe we're up in the San Mateo area, I think. And theirs is based on a community network system. And QuickBit was targeting mobile home parks around the state to improve access. They had submitted a project that was in our region in Santa Barbara County due to a challenge that indicated that there was already infrastructure serving that particular mobile home park. They modified their application. So the QuickBit application does not impact our region, but was approved for several other mobile home parks. And I mentioned that the 2024 grant cycle will, we're not sure what the timeline is, but we'll be sure to share that as soon as we have that information. The broadband loan loss reserve, I touched on this on the last slide, so I won't linger too long. We'll have a longer conversation about it at a future meeting. But the loan loss reserve fund does cover unserved, underserved, and served locations. So that was a part of the rulemaking debate. The rulemaking was finalized November 28th of last year. And initially it was only, it was meant to only cover unserved and underserved households. But the argument was made that in order to make these projects financially viable, it should include some servable or served locations already in order to wrap in and reach out to those households that were unserved or underserved. So again, that's the loan loss reserve is available to public agencies, tribal organizations, and nonprofits. The public housing grant applications, and I want to highlight this because we have had a lot of success in our region with public housing grant applications, and that's a great way to focus energy and efforts on connecting some of our most in need community members. In January 2024, the Paso Robles Public Housing Authority submitted 2 applications for Oak Park, their Oak Park area. In July 2023, the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo requested funds for the Paso Home Key project, and People's Self-Help Housing submitted for the city of San Luis Obispo and Goleta. Those applications are still pending. But as a reminder, in July 2022, we were awarded in our region 15 different public housing grants from People's Self-Help Housing and Surf Development. So there has been some great success in that particular grant project. What I will also highlight is you'll see a lot of Paso Robles activity here. Paso and Atascadero last year worked together and leveraged, I believe, a LATA grant to create the North County Fiber Plan and for San Luis Obispo County. And they have really been leveraging that plan in order to make an impact in their communities. So we've seen an uptick in activity from Paso and Atascadero in terms of participating in these public grants and having really well-targeted projects that are key to serving the underserved or the folks that just don't have connectivity in their area. So bravo to the North County plan and also to the staff members of those agencies that are actually taking that plan and really leveraging it and using it to make a difference in their communities. Santa Barbara County also, broadband strategic plan was completed in 2022, and they have leveraged that plan in order to file FFA applications for 4 communities that were underserved or unserved, and to build partnerships and start working on relationships with both private and other state agencies in order to move the needle in the county. We're really excited about the work that VCOG's doing and all of its partners and participants with that LATA grant, because it's really clear that these strategic plans do make a difference and they can make an impact when we take those plans and put the rub where the rubber hits the road, right? Where we actually make changes in the communities.
I just wanted to jump in there if I could, that a quick plug on another plan. Reach has just finished a comprehensive economic development strategy for SLO and Santa Barbara counties, which is a EDA funded planning grant. So it's a planning grant that's submitted to the EDA for economic development strategies. And a small piece of that includes broadband, but I do champion it because the Paso and Pescadero effort was funded partially through the EDA, specifically because of the CEDSIM process. So, being able to now leverage additional funding through the EDA for things like this has been really helpful. So, looking to some of those plans and pointing to them when applying for applications is kind of the goal of all of that.
I appreciate that call out that some of this funding is coming from the EDA. I have also been seeing new notices from USDA about their Reconnect program as well. That is something that our more rural communities should be looking at and tracking to determine, if and really touching base with the USDA liaisons. There are other funding sources that are connected to different types of projects that you can use for broadband. And, we're happy to have those conversations with anyone. Thanks, Michael. Anyone else want to jump in on some CPUC updates? Maybe you've heard something I don't know yet. Okay. One of my side gigs is being an adjunct online instructor for a community college, so I'm not afraid to pause and have long breaks of silence, you guys. Moving on to digital equity, where that's moving into our ACP conversation. How many of you heard the news last week that the Affordable Connectivity Program has been frozen? They're using the word ACP is in a freeze. They haven't used the terminology closed or ended or sunsetted, but there is no indication that there will be an ACP Part 2 or an ACP continued after the funds expire. Currently, ACP enrollments will end on February 7th. That's the last day to enroll in the Affordable Connectivity Program. The subsidy will no longer be available as of April of this year. There is a $7 billion bipartisan bill that is currently in Congress to extend the subsidy through the end of 2024, but that does not indicate that they will continue accepting enrollments. So enrollments will stop on February 7th. The $7 billion bill, either if it's passed, it will extend the subsidy for people who are enrolled as of February 7th through the end of 2024. If it doesn't pass, then the final date will be April 2024. As Kirsten mentioned, internet providers who have been participating in this have all received instructions about what steps they need to take to ensure that their customers are aware of the change and that they are have options for how to approach that change. I would love to hear from some of our providers on this call about those instructions, how you're handling it, how you're thinking about handling it, what sort of efforts you're making to work with your customers, right? These are your customers, and maybe converting them into customers that can pay for a plan that's in their budget. So I'm interested to hear from you about that. This chart that we put up here, while you're thinking about what you might share, this is a chart of the current enrollments as of November 2023. That's how recent we have data. This was published January 3rd. This data was published January 3rd, but it goes through November 30th. And for each county, you can see how many households were eligible. And so what we've done is in that green line at the bottom, we've indicated what the value of that subsidy per month was for our communities. So based on how many eligible households could have been participating in that and receiving that subsidy per month, This is estimated because we don't have disaggregated data that shows which tribal households were enrolled. That's a different level of discount of subsidy, excuse me, at $75 a month. So we underestimated basically by calculating based on the $30 a month only. So it shows how much the monthly loss is in our region for potential subsidy, but then the column that says households enrolled, HHs enrolled, that shows what the actual number of people who were enrolled or households as of November 30th were, and what the losses in our region per month in terms of what it costs to get people connected, right? And this was coming from that program, and we need to find ways to fill that now somehow as communities that understand the importance and the impact of having access. The importance of having access to your health, to your economic prospects, to education and professional training, and to participation in our society. So it's a bummer. I'm pretty bummed out that it got it's not funded any longer. So I'm interested to hearing from any of you who have ideas or thoughts or plans for helping your customers stay connected or helping your constituents get connected.
So Shelby, I can jump in again. I mean, I sort of alluded to it before, but we're, ready. And I mean, one, we have to start the notification process. That's sort of, there's certain timelines, a first notification, a second notification, and a final notification that the FCC is requiring all providers to provide to their customers. So we'll be following that, but what I sort of alluded to before is, we're going to really be working with these customers and our local partners just to make sure they know they're aware of all the affordable options we have, the different plans, the different ways they can package things, and able, if they need to, with the loss of the subsidy, work with them to make those changes to keep their connectivity and keep their connectivity at the lowest possible cost to them based on their needs and their household's needs.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, right? Because we have to be able to make the business case for these plans, right? Like it can't just be we don't have internet for free, but it is great to hear about plans that maybe target a demographic of customers that don't need 100 level speeds or gigabyte speeds, have a lower need for a lower threshold, but still should be connected in some way. So I'm happy to hear about that.
And Shelby, just for the record, all of our plans, including our affordability plans, are at least 100. And then, go up from there. So, many of you are aware, but Cox offers, we have our Connect to Compete program, which is $9.95 a month. And that is specifically targeted for families with K through 12 age students. And then we have our Connect Assist program, which is for all low-income families or individuals or seniors, across the board. And that is $30. And that program was designed to match the subsidy. And so even if, with the subsidy going away, people, of course, can still take advantage of that $30 a month program. And then we have some other things, some prepaid options, some ways to, bundle your internet with your Cox mobile phone, that kind of thing, that helps bring some of the costs down as well. So,
yeah, thank you. And I don't want to call anyone else out if you're not interested in sharing, but I did want to provide the space for any other providers to share their information out. with the group. We've got public agencies on the call and nonprofits who might be able to help promote those low-cost programs as they're figuring out how to support their communities as well. Okay. Feel free to jump in or put in the chat if you are interested. The Broadband Consortium had received a grant from CETF to help cover the costs of ACP enrollment events. So that was a pass-through grant for us. We are actually passing that along to local organizations to support their efforts to enroll folks in ACP. Since there is now a timeline on that, we have asked all of our CBO partners, our community-based organizations, if they want to move their event up to prior to February 7th, to talk to their community members, enroll those who are interested in ACP to get the benefit for the last 3 months or last 11 months, as if the bipartisan bill passes, but also to talk to them about affordability options. We would love to hear from the local providers, not necessarily on the call, but in an email, if you have a flyer that advertises your low-cost plans that we can share with our CBOs. They will be using these events as an opportunity not only to share what the ACP can cover and to share when it will stop covering that, but also to share information about local options, and particularly any plans that are designed to capture that audience of folks who are living at or below the 200% of the federal poverty level. So we're currently working with the CBOs to share low-cost internet plan availability in the communities that they're working with as well. You can see on the left side here, in the blue box, the list of ACP enrollment events. Many of our CBOs would welcome to have a representative from your organization there. So if you have local representation and you have somebody who can show up at one of these events and share information about your plans, we would be happy to connect you to the organization directly and work out, how you can participate and support that event. Anyone else want to share any ideas? One of the things that we've talked about, and Bill, maybe you want to speak to this, is the impact of community networks on key neighborhoods. Not necessarily having a community network throughout our whole region, but looking at key neighborhoods that would benefit from a community network. Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about that? We'll have a longer discussion in one of our future meetings.
I think we're queuing it up to have a discussion about utility of community networks, probably second quarter of this calendar year. But in the whole topic of inclusion, certain areas of need have remained areas of need, and it's just historical, coming from a historian. And there's reasons for that, and so open access I think is very important. Public ownership is going to be very important, and being able to allow the public sector to be able to assure that these areas of need are taken care of and well taken care of is going to be very important. And so I've kind of over the years flipped to, being on one side where it's very much, let's not tamper with what's been broken, to completely on the other side. Now, when you talk about areas where it don't pencil out, have active public participation in these areas of need are examples of that. And so, we're going to, within the communities that we're dealing with, the VCOG and other public organizations, we're going to be talking about these areas and encouraging them to make the investment, to apply for the grants, to put in the infrastructure, to be able to service the public areas of need and make it open access so anybody can get in. And it also will help the business case for those that want to enter those markets. So thank you for the opportunity. It's an exciting time to be working in this space right now.
It is. And, you know, we're looking at connecting 98% of California, right? And in some cases, there isn't a business case for private industry to be there, and we get that. But we also know that access to adequate, reliable internet connections benefits community economies. It helps people move from a socioeconomic status where they can't afford internet to possibly living in a socioeconomic status where they will be able to afford internet. So it's really investments in the community. It's investments in the health of the future of the community. And you know, there is room for public-private partnerships in deploying community networks as one pathway to serving our communities. Is there anyone on the call that has worked on a community network or is working on developing one of those, wants to share? Or has an opinion that's different than ours? We're happy to have a conversation. All right. Well, we can also, you know, feel free to reach out by email or give us a call after the cameras are all off here. If you want to talk about attending one of these ACP enrollment events, or if you have some other innovative ideas. Again, we shared what our objectives are for BCPC, and it's really to support the work that you're already doing. You're the ones with the knowledge of the community and the ability to innovate. One last piece that I have updates I'll highlight is that the state of California did pass, not pass, but moved AB 1588, the Affordable Internet and Net Equality Act, from their Communications Committee to the Appropriations Committee. So they were able to garner enough support and agreement on modifications to the Affordable Internet and Net Equality Act of 2023 to move it towards appropriations for discussion. So we are tracking that. The Affordable Internet and Net Equality Act is not exactly ACP. It is at the state level. It has a couple of requirements that it would enact in the state of California to help serve low-income households. One of those provisions would be requiring any internet provider who has or wants to have a contract with a public agency to offer a low-cost plan for their customer base for households that qualify. So not just offer it to everybody, but have a qualifier in there, and to actually actively tell customers about that plan, not just have it, but to also market it as well. So that is a bill that impacts all of our stakeholders. We encourage you to take a look at it and engage with that information. It is sponsored by Wilson, and it is moving. CETF is tracking it and providing updates for us that we are sharing out through our newsletter. So that's a more statewide solution, or not solution, but option and opportunity. Any other digital equity practitioners on the call that want to hop in or add anything? All right, let's move on. So moving into our statewide digital equity plan. I know a number of you who are on the call came to the June 1st meeting in Santa Maria to discuss digital equity and BEAD funds and to help strategize ideas and provide ideas for improving digital equity across our state. This statewide digital equity plan is a result of the aggregated feedback that CDT received from meetings like ours. So our June 1st meeting that we held in Santa Maria was one of 20 meetings conducted across the state. And the information that was garnered through not only those meetings, but also through the statewide survey that many of you completed, through the DEAM tool, the Digital Equity Ecosystem Mapping tool that CDT put out, Also data was gathered through phone calls, right? So they actually did phone surveys, reaching out through targeted phone calls to help people take the survey, the digital equity survey that was aren't already connected and couldn't submit it online. So they did a pretty decent job of working on outreach. Some of our community partners have reviewed this plan and indicated that they think they could do more to collect data and to make sure that data is representative of the populations that we are targeting with the digital equity plan. But it is the product that some of you have informed. And for this reason, as well as for the fact that some BEAD funds will be allocated to implementing the statewide digital equity plan, we are strongly encouraging you to look at, if not the whole plan, it's a pretty long document, I think it's over 200 pages, to look at pieces of it that your expertise can inform and provide a public comment from your organizations or your personal perspective. So I outlined sort of an overview of the document. We will send out a link to the PowerPoint slides that break down each section and what each section is about, so you could do some more targeted research on it. And also we'll send out the link for making a public comment. Santa Barbara Foundation reviewed the document through their policy analyst and made a couple of recommendations that we shared out in our newsletter. So you're welcome to look at those and see how that fits in with what you believe. Basically the document, in addition to describing their methodology and their data that they've gathered, they establish a collective vision for digital equity in the state of California. This includes ensuring access, affordability, training, and technical support. So 4 different elements that they're looking at from the digital equity perspective. It describes the current state. So what did they assess from all of our survey data and all of the data that they collected? What are the barriers to access, affordability, and adoption? And how are those barriers broken down into specific covered populations? I believe that they identified 8 covered populations, including, and I do not have the list in front of me, so you'll forgive me, I hope, but including low-income households, including English as a second language or language learning households, formerly incarcerated or justice-involved individuals, including, who else am I missing? The senior community. They're listed in the document. I can't think of everybody off the top of my head, but it's really breaking down. Veterans is another one, yeah. Really breaking down which barriers apply to which populations. So if you work with one of those populations, or they're your customers or your clients or your community members, we'd encourage you to look at that section and provide your comment, because you're the expert in that area, and the state needs your public comment in order to incorporate accurate, adequate, and reflective data about our communities. The next section that we would encourage you to look at is the implementation strategies. This is, again, that aggregation of all those ideas that came out of our June 1st meetings. So how are we going to fund and sustain our outcome areas? Outcome areas include education, economic development, health, participation in civic society. So their outcome areas are connected to specific areas. And so the strategies include, how do you fund those things on an ongoing basis and how do you sustain them? And then also the implementation of 7 key activities to support those 8 covered populations. So if you have the expertise or organizational insight, we encourage you to look at the pieces that you are familiar with and submit public comment on those. The more feedback we get from our region, the more adequately it will reflect our communities, and the more we will be eligible for funding that will contribute to the growth of our communities. The deadline is January 25th. We will send out the link after this meeting, probably tomorrow morning. The timeline for this funding source, the BEAD funding for digital equity, not the BEAD funding for infrastructure, which is a separate pot of money, but the timeline, this quarter, they will be integrating all of the public comments, and NTIA will review the final document and make a recommendation about, is it approved or not. In Q2, they will publish the final approved plan and open a NOFO for the capacity grants. I believe the capacity grants are, the state applies for them. So in this, they are also looking, in this plan, they're also looking at how will they distribute those funds or what will they go to. In Q3 of this year, a national competitive grant will be available. And so this is where organizations are able to submit their ideas and plans and requests for funding for implementing the strategies that were identified in the plan. So the capacity grant, I believe, is to be distributed through the state, and the competitive grant is a national competitive across the nation. So organizations will be competing with each other beyond our state as well. Any questions about the digital equity plan? I think we're still waiting to hear about the final approval for our BEAD infrastructure grant proposal that was submitted through the state. I don't believe we've heard back on that one yet to make sure that it's final approval. The BEAD grant that many of you who are doing infrastructure and deployment are interested in, we will be talking next month a little more deeply about that grant as it moves closer to the process of opening its application period. In February, there will be, well, the plan says that in February, the challenge process will open. So challenging the data that is being used to identify broadband serviceable locations and eligible locations for BEAD funding. So that process in the plan is scheduled to open in February. Again, we'll see how that timeline adjusts as these plans go through the approval process and the given the nature of these organizations that need to approve them. Any questions or thoughts, additions? All right. I'm going to quote Sunny McWright, who leads CETF, and she always says, "Your silence is confirmation." I'm assuming you agree with me. All right, well, you know, this wraps up our conversation for today, or the information we wanted you to know, at least. But I would like to hear from you on any interest in special discussion topics for 2024 for these meetings, for our newsletter. What do you want to make sure that we're covering? Even if it's something you know we already cover, what is it that you're looking for? We've laid out our agendas for the first few months of this year. We don't have topics for example, a few months in the summer, but we will have them. But we want to hear from you. Do you have something that you're really interested in hearing more about? Is there a guest speaker that you're interested in hearing from? Is there a fund source that you want us to make sure we're giving you frequent updates on? You can unmute or drop it in the chat, but we want to know your input. And if you do not have input, or if you want to send it to us in an email later, I'm actually going to stop recording. I'm going to thank everyone for joining us. And we will hang out on the call. You know, we're here until 1. If you have any input that you want to share, questions you want to ask off the recording, we are happy to talk with you.